Hi, welcome to a new episode in the Internet Surfer, hosting the most horror and creepiest stories from Reddit. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy.
A really creepy experience I had in Japan. A long horror story from Reddit. True scary stories. A pretty creepy experience I had back in the early 2000s in Japan. A little background on me for context. I grew up as a biracial military brat and spent the better part of 2 decades growing up in Japan. Having spent years growing up in Japan and in the US, I can confidently say that there is something different when it comes to talk of paranormal or strange experiences. I imagine that many on the subreddit may be familiar with how popular spooky Asian stories have come in the last 20 or so years. So read on to hear about some of the strangest occurrences I have encountered. During my late teens to my early 20s, my social circle and I had a naive obsession with exploring places in Japan known for paranormal activities, urban legends, and investigating creepy areas. This was prior to advent of reality television really blowing up like ghost hunting shows. In Japan, shows like this would broadcast regularly in the summer. Like October is the witching season for Western cultures, the month of August is for Japan. This was our motivation for partaking for these excursions. So here is my story. As a military brat who grew up in Japan while attending school on a U.S. military installation, I graduated in the early 2000s. Following graduation, most of my graduating class moved back to the U.S. to pursue college or start their adult lives. Most would leave and never return to Japan. My parent is Japanese, so I had every reason to return. It was December and I had just returned home to Japan after my fall semester at college. To my relief, a couple of my friends chose to remain in Japan after high school. So, I had friends to hang out with while home on vacation. One evening I am out joyriding with my friends. We had nowhere important to be and just driving around aimlessly. Occasionally, we stopped by popular hangout spots for young adults hoping to meet some cute Japanese girls to flirt with, as how else would a couple of young 19-year-old dudes would want to spend an evening? My friend, which I will call Jay, had a 90s Nissan Silvia, aka 240SX outside of Japan for your car folks, and he was obsessed with drifting. Truth be told, he was not good at it. You really couldn't fault the guy for trying though. That evening he suggested that we take off to Asamizo Park near our hometown of Sagamihara, as this large public park had many parking lots peppered throughout its grounds. The lots were prime locations for him to practice whipping his car around while not causing damage or fender benders. Without hesitation, we all agree and head that direction. About 20 minutes later and we are passing the main entrance to Asamizo. During the day, this is a pleasant public park that many people recreate at. Japan in comparison to other countries is very relatively safe country. This park was no exception to that notion. However, it did have some unfortunate events happen there. I will elaborate on this more later. After driving into the park for about 7 minutes we reached the first parking lot. It was around 10 o'clock at night. We pull in and park. I hopped out of the car and pulled out a fresh pack of cigarettes and lit one up. The evening was brisk. I gazed around letting my night vision calibrate as the lights far off in the distance twinkled. My other friend with us, R, also lit a cigarette and we proceeded to have a conversation about whether Jay would be able to even get his car sideways. Jay pulls out and begins to whip his car around the parking lot. As Jay's car spun counterclockwise, the wailing of his tires attempting to grip the asphalt broke silence in the evening. Even now, I can close my eyes and still remember the smell of burning rubber. Adjacent to the parking lot was a tree line that led into some thick brush and wooded area. The park was known for its greenbelts scattered throughout it. I remember looking over my shoulder a few times that evening because I had this feeling that we were being watched from the woods. But each time I scanned the tree line, I saw nothing out of the ordinary. What happened next would cause me to jump so hard that I laugh even now when thinking about it. The cell phone in my right pocket starts ringing and vibrating, and I jumped with a fright. The fact that light paranoia had set in from watching the tree lines did not help with the anxiety experienced from the unexpected phone call. As I was attending college in the States and only back on vacation, I no longer had a cell phone in Japan. In fact, my younger sister had lent her phone to me so that I could be reached if necessary. I pulled the phone out thinking that she or my mother was calling for something, as none of my friends even had this number. I looked down at the green backlit LCD screen and saw displayed in Japanese was a restricted number. I thought it was strange but figured maybe my sister was calling from a public phone. Yes, those were still a thing back then. I answered the phone and said, "Moshi, that's how you answer a phone in Japanese," and there was nothing but silence for a response. I remembered hearing a bit of static, and then finally I heard the voice of a Japanese girl. My immediate thoughts were this must be a friend of my sister, and so I explained that I am her brother and borrowing her phone for the evening. If she needed to get a hold of my sister, she should ring the house. She apologized and I reassured her that no harm had been done and then promptly end the phone call. I placed the cell phone back in my pocket and focused back to ruckus of noise coming from Jay's car. It must have been not 10 minutes later. The cell phone in my pocket began ringing again. This time I was sure that it had to be my sister or my mother. Earlier that day, I left home and did not say where I was going or when I planned to return home. It wasn't uncommon for my mother or sister to call, and I asked if I had eaten dinner or if she should leave food out for when I would return. I pull the phone out and once again, I have a phone call, and it was from a restricted number. I answer the phone and this time the voice of the same Japanese girl was on the other end of the phone call. Before I could ask why she was calling for my sister, she cut me off. Now, based off the previous phone call, I thought there was a couple of things funny. I know most of my sister's friends and recognize their voice over the phone. This girl, on the other hand, I did not. Additionally, my sister never mentioned anything about new friends and her circle was tight. She wasn't excessively big on being a social butterfly. But perhaps, I was wrong. My sister is 3 years junior to me, and so my assumption was this girl had to be around my sister's age and too young for me. I had extraordinarily little interest in engaging in conversation with her. As she probed me questions, I kept my answers vague. I don't even know why I continued to entertain a conversation with her, but hanging up would just be very rude. Suddenly, she asked what I was doing in a park so late in the evening. I almost began to answer when it dawned on me. I did not mention anything about where I was at or what I was doing. I told her I never said I was at a park. She lightly giggled and tried to play it off, insisting that she thought I said I was at a park. I told her this was weird and that I had to go and hung up. Jay grew tired of drifting in this parking lot. He pulled up to us and from the driver's side suggested we change up the scenery. R and I hop back in the vehicle and off we went. Now at another parking lot, we hop out and Jay continues to do his thing. This parking lot had soccer fields not too far from it, and the lamps in the parking lot painted an orange hue, which was a bit comforting. Oddly enough, the feeling of being watched returned to me. I swung around to my right and stared at the empty field on the other side of the parking lot fence. There was nothing. At this point, Jay parks his car and shuts it off. Now silence and a thin film of burnt rubber veiled the parking lot. R starts asking what was up with the phone calls. I began to explain to Jay and R what transpired. They both agreed that it was a little strange, but speculated that maybe my sister mentioned to her friends that her older brother was back in town. Jay proceeds to tease me that I should start talking to the chick, but I protest because I have no interest. Suddenly, my phone rings again. Same deal, restricted phone number and same girl. This time, she sounds a bit more aggressive. How come you left? What was wrong with the last spot? I asked what she meant. She then says you left the last parking lot you were just at. I remember the hairs standing on the back of my neck. I made it a point to be vague and never mentioned what I was doing or where I was at. Yet somehow, this girl knew what I was doing and knew that we had left the first parking lot. Something didn't feel right, so I hung up on her. A moment later and my phone is blowing up. I answer again, this time irate. "What do you want?" There is silence and then I hear light static. In a sort of hushed manner, I hear her voice, "I'm at the field." "I see you." I spin around and face the field looking for any sign of a person. I remember my heart racing a bit as I fumble to figure out what exactly is going on. "What do you mean you see me at the field?" I asked. She tells me that she sees me standing with my friends wearing my gray jacket and my friend's car. She tells me that she is coming over to us and wants to hang out. The line goes dead. I look at both J and R and give the rundown on what she said. They both had weird looks on their faces and I know them well enough to know when they're lying or pulling my leg. They both just look clueless. My phone rings again. "Hey, I almost there. Will you wait for me?" The girl asks. "Huh? No. What is going on here? Why do you keep asking me questions? How do you know where I am at? Just who are you anyway?" "I know all my sister's friends and I don't recognize your voice," I exclaimed. "I never said I knew your sister," she replied in another hushed manner. At this point, I was like WTF. I look back at the field and I don't see anything. As I'm still on the phone with her I asked where she was at. She said that she would be there shortly. I'm sure my friend sensed the panic in my voice. Jay goes on about nobody knows we are there. How does this chick seem to have our location? Mind you, this is 2000 and social media, Internet 2.0 and smartphones are not thing yet. People just can't get your location at that. On top of that, we are few kilometers out of the way. You just don't randomly run into people like that. The evening is getting later as it is past 11 p.m. and I have no explanation as to what is going on. My phone rings again and before I can even answer hello, she asks if I can see her. I am spinning and jerking like a laundry machine agitator at this point. Both of my friends decided that this is too weird. R yanks the phone from my hand, proceeds to speak with her as well. I should explain that we all speak Japanese. Although I am telling this story in English, all the conversations that are happening are in Japanese. Our feeling like this is a joke decided to toy with her a bit. He starts to ask her what she is wearing. She begins explaining something to him from what I can hear from how he responds. He then asks her what color her undergarments are, but then she abruptly hangs up. R tells me that he thinks he annoyed her enough that she may not bother calling again. We all nervously chuckle as we cannot even begin to understand what all just transpired. My phone blows up again. Same deal, restricted call. I answer again, this time upset, but I'm cut off. Her voice is much louder now. I could hear what sounded like wind in the background. She begins saying that she is quickly approaching us. Yelling to not leave her. She wants to be with us. All of a sudden I hear Jay drop a soda can as he faced the field. What the fuck is that? I remember Jay saying in disbelief. I hang the phone up. I look at both my friends and Jay motions to jump in the car. We all jump in, and he stomps on the gas as we make our escape. My phone rings again. I look and although I don't want to answer, I feel as though I need to. I take the call, and I can hear her voice. It sounds slightly huskier. She casually said, "It's a shame that you all left before I could reach you." Jay is driving frantically away from the park. At the time, I had no idea where he was taking us. It was just quiet in the car as I had the phone held up to my ear. Oh well. I guess I will just need to follow and find you all at the family mart that you're going to stop at, she said as she gave a creepy laugh. I then replied, "What the hell do you mean by the family mart that we going to?" Before I realized it, Jay had cut the wheel hard and pulled to the side of the road and threw his four-way hazard lights and brought the car to sudden stop. Our near hit the dashboard sitting in shotgun seat. Jay turned and looked at me. I can still remember the white look on his face. He then quietly asked, "How did she know I was taking us to Family Mart?" Family Mart is a Japanese convenience store chain found throughout Japan. I hung the phone up and then powered it off. We sat in silence for a moment there. This felt like a weird dream or something. I told Jay let's go somewhere else. Shortly after we drove to a 24-hour restaurant that was our hangout spot where many of our Japanese friends frequented. We just wanted somewhere brightly lit and somewhat crowded to chill out. As we walked up to the entrance, I could see some friends occupying a booth. We walked in and proceeded to join the party. After we ordered some coffee, we started explaining on strange occurrence. Initially, everyone listened on with excitement. But as I explained the story, the look of excitement written on everyone's face eventually faded and it got awkwardly quiet. Another female friend of mine who sat across from me, I'll call her A-chan, looked at me and asked again whereabouts in the park were we at. As she asked me this, I could see her make eye contact with her boyfriend, H. He pulled out a cigarette and lit it just as he went into his explanation. He then began to explain, "You guys, you all do know what happened in Asamizo Park, right?" We all exchange a blank glance. Continuing, there was an incident that happened in that park one evening, where a girl was walking through the park in the evening. Someone approached her and dragged her into the greenbelt where she was raped and strangled. I heard some rumors about some bad juju associated with the area. In disbelief I scoff, "You're joking, right?" Without any hesitation, he looked at me and said, "Nope. But we need to go to a shrine. Her spirit may have latched on to you."
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.